Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP Wisconsin. I am Amber Miller, your host. And as always, during our show today, if you have any questions or comments for our guests, we always invite you to put them in the comment box below, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. So before we get to our guest, of course, I'd love to point you to the AARP Wisconsin website. Should you have any questions about upcoming events, advocacy, everything that you can find that we're working on for AARP Wisconsin could be found at aarp.org/WI. Also, please remember the AARP Community Connections website. There's a couple different things here. You'll find local volunteer opportunities within your area, but also ones that maybe you can even put together yourself. So this could be like, helping your neighbor shovel or neighborhood garbage pickup. So you could find that there. And then also you could find the AARP Friendly Voice Initiative, which launched about 2 years ago. It is free. It's open to all ages, and you do not need to be a member. And what it is you could put a request in for yourself or for your loved one to receive a friendly voice call from one of our trained AARP volunteers. And as we know, since we are living through COVID-19, that sometimes it's nice just to hear a voice on the other end. So there's two ways that you can take advantage of that program, which is go below to aarpcommunityconnections.org, or by calling 1-888-281-0145. And once again, it is free and open to all ages. And even though we are living through more of a virtual world, we're always looking for volunteers to join the AARP Wisconsin family. So if you're interested in learning more about volunteer opportunities or even applying for some, we invite you to go to the website below, which is aarp.org/I want the number 2 volunteer. So I want to volunteer. You can also go to the AARP Wisconsin website, which also has volunteer information there. So we are very lucky that AARP picks a theme out every month for the states to focus on. And this month, the theme is staying competitive in the job market. So whether you're unemployed, underemployed, maybe even looking for a change. We have two really great guests with us today. So I'd love to introduce Heather Tinsley-Fix, and she is the Senior Advisor for Employment Engagement. And then also Susan Weinstock, who is a Vice President of Financial Resilience Programming, both out of our AARP National Office. Hello, ladies.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Heather.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Susan. I know we were talking about the weather beforehand since you both are on the East Coast, but it sounds like you missed all that snow that was coming your way. So you're very lucky. So, of course, we know, in the new year, a lot of people have resolutions. We always hear like, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to eat better. But a lot of people are like, maybe this is my year to really start either looking for a new path, whether that's a new job, maybe learning a new skill set. So I know with AARP, we really look at staying competitive in the job market seriously. So that's why we're very glad to have you both here. Heather, I'm going to start with you. I know there was a survey that AARP did last year, and it was entitled Hiring for Experience, Employer Attitudes Towards Credentials as Proof of Skills. And I know there's always a lot of talk of, college degrees and transferable skills and all that stuff. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about the survey itself. So if we could start with that, if you could talk a little bit about the survey. And then the second question would be, what were some of the key findings?
Sure. Well, so yes, we do actually spend a lot of our, the work that Susan and I do and others across the organization on the work and jobs sort of initiative, as we call it, is sort of twofold. It's one, to help you, the 50 plus, compete in the labor market, thrive in the labor market. And the other prong is to engage with employers, usually folks in HR or diversity, equity, and inclusion, on the value of older workers in particular, and on the value of age diversity at work in general. So this research we did last year was to employers. We wanted to find out their attitudes towards credentials versus, say, degrees as proof of a skill. Right. So because we know that in the HR community, there's a shift towards what's often called skills-based hiring,
Mhm.
right? And it's intended to remove some of those barriers that have previously existed with this over focus on degrees. Um, so we surveyed employers to find out sort of A, what they think of credentials in general as a, as a proxy for skills, and B, what they think of older workers, what they think the strengths of older workers are. So some of the key findings were that in terms of credentials, it's actually when you ask an employer, do you value experience, a degree, or credentials more? As the way that you would assess a candidate, and they actually said experience was the
Mm.
top thing that they value. And that's encouraging for those of us who have more experience than less, right? So that was a good finding, and interesting. Credentials are in some cases very straightforward. PMP
Mhm.
certification, and some healthcare credentials, and technical credentials. Those tend to be very straightforward, but in other areas, it's a bit of a wild west. So that's possibly why they employers are still really relying heavily on experience. The other really encouraging finding is that employers consider older workers to have an advantage over younger workers in a lot of soft skills, which makes sense, right? Because soft skills
Mhm.
are the kind you learn on the job, you learn over time, you learn through exposure to people and ideas in your professional life. So that's fantastic. For a majority of the soft skills that we ask employers about, they consider older workers to have the advantage, or to be, sort of just on par with younger workers. And those are things like leadership, mentorship and development, critical thinking, solving problems, making judgment calls, those, being able to read a room, relationship management, those types of skills. And so that's fantastic. And we really encourage you to emphasize those skills, those types of soft skills, when you're applying for jobs and when you're in interviews.
And and I could see why the soft skills are so important because a lot of the skills that you mentioned, Heather, are not you can maybe get a degree for leadership, but that's not something you can just read a book on and be like, I'm going to implement it. It takes, years of working and experience and volunteerism. So I can see why that soft skills would be so important more than credentials.
Yeah, and it's one thing that we're really curious about is how do you, apart from stating that right on your resume, how do you sort of show evidence of those types of
Mhm.
skills, those transferable skills? Because that automation is changing the way, excuse me, most jobs are done. Pardon me. And so we know that technical skills and digital skills are important. Certainly, digital literacy at a basic level is extremely important for any job these days. But as more and more job tasks become automated, the more sort of human skills that are harder to replicate in automated processes are going to become more important. And indeed, when I look at surveys of CEOs, I've been sort of tracking this over the past couple of years. They talk about how hard it is to find good soft skills. So, good leadership, good critical thinking, the ability to communicate. So, those are just rising in importance as more and more sort of rote tasks are being automated. And that's something to think about in terms of your value proposition when you're, sort of, again, in that interview with your elevator speech, making sure that you emphasize those types of skills.
And Heather, with the survey results, which I love that we're focusing more on soft skills, I think that's great. How do you think the job market looks for the 50 plus population, knowing, with COVID and maybe people looking to change kind of jobs and stuff? How would you say, based off the survey, that it looks for the 50 plus?
Well, certainly, so the survey was really more focused on employer attitudes, but I would say right now is a time that is good for all workers actually to make some demands, or to be picky and choosy, pick and choose where they work. If you want a remote working, if you want a job that's remote only or remote part of the time, you have a lot more leverage now to sort of negotiate that with your current or future employer, because the labor market is so tight. There are more open jobs than there are unemployed people to fill them. And so, employers are, whenever the job market gets tight, employers become a lot more creative in their interpretation of job requirements. And so there is an opportunity right now to really sort of push for that flexibility that you want, and to strike out and say, I have 3/4 of the skills that are in this job description, and I have an ability to learn, and I have tenacity, and I, sort of sell yourself in that way, like I can make up the other fourth through some upskilling. Or if you sort of are analyzing job descriptions and you see that there's a key skill set that you're missing, definitely look into upskilling. There's, aarp.org has a fantastic tool called Skill Builder for Work, and it offers some free trainings and then discounts on other trainings. So check that out at aarp.org/skills4work.
Great. We will definitely look into that. And Heather, I'm going to get to Susan right now, but we'd love to, of course, still have you on because we always get questions. So, Susan, I know there was another survey that came out, which I love talking about the surveys and the research, because I don't know if a lot of people realize AARP even does all that. So it's on our website. But Susan, specifically, there's one in particular called Women Work and the Road to Resilience, Working Women at Midlife and Beyond. Of course, we know that the women 50 plus make up a large portion of our workforce. Can you talk a little bit more about that survey?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much. So this was a survey that we fielded in June of last year, June 2021, of women who are working or were recently out of work. And the age ranges was from 40 to 65. And a couple of the interesting findings, since the beginning of 2020, 40% of women ages 40 to 65 had lost job-based income through job loss, reduced hours, furloughs, temporary layoffs, or a reduced salary or an hourly wage. And then women who were providing care to others, either a family member, parent, grandparent, whatever, or a child, a grandchild or a child, were more likely to lose a job during the pandemic, 17% versus 12%, and to have their hours reduced, 16% versus 11%. Overall, 62% of working women, either ages 40 to 65, were in frontline or on-site jobs in their most recent jobs, either the current job that they were employed in.
Oh, Susan, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
So sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know how that happened. That was weird. So over half, 55% of women workers in this age cohort have looked for a job since turning 40. And the type of discrimination they found the most common was age discrimination, something that we fight against all the time. 31%, almost a third of women found it. More than gender discrimination, more than race, ethnicity. It was a lot. And 1 in 10 women were caring for both a family member or a friend and a child or a grandchild. So that would, you can imagine trying to do all of that all at the same time and having that have an impact on your work. Hispanic and Latina women were more than twice as likely to be caring for both for both ends of the spectrum than white women or Asian women. And 12% of Black women cared for both a family member or friend and a child or a grandchild. So those are all, really important findings about what's going on in this job market right now for women particularly.
And Susan, or Darren, our producer, there is a question, but I'm going to hold it for one moment because I'm going to have Heather and Susan answer it. And you kind of alluded a little bit to it already, Susan, but how has COVID-19 affected the 50 plus workforce? I mean, was there an issue before COVID, or do you think COVID kind of shed a new light on it?
Well, we keep hearing about the Great Resignation, and we know that more people have resigned, more baby boomers have resigned in 2020 than did in 2019. Although the interesting other piece of that factoid is that the Social Security claims have not gone up. We're not sure what's going on there. Now, it may be because the Social Security offices are, for the most part, closed, so you can't walk into one and get help. You'd have to do it either online or on the phone. So maybe that's keeping people from starting to claim Social Security. We're not sure. It also might be that these are folks who are, it's not actually the Great Resignation, it's actually the Great Reshuffle. And they're looking at their jobs and they're looking at their lives and they're saying, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of what I've been doing. I want to try something new. I want to follow my passion. And so I'm going to think about taking a course or retraining, learning a new skill, changing to another job, focusing on that passion. So I think there's still lots of survey research to be done out there to figure out exactly what's going on in this job market.
And Susan, besides COVID-19, because women obviously make up more of the caregivers, and you kind of gave some examples, whether you're a mother, an aunt, a sibling, a parent, you're always taking, care of somebody. What other issues besides COVID-19 have affected the 50 plus population, specifically women workers?
Well, I think we saw it in the age discrimination numbers. For a third of them to say that age discrimination was an issue in finding a job, and then once they actually get the job, they also say that age discrimination is a problem. 15% of them said, "Okay, I got the job despite age discrimination." 15% of them are still reporting that they're experiencing age discrimination once they're on the job. So that's a problem. And Heather, a lot of the work that she does is working with employers to help them build those multi-generational teams, which we think is so important to have that successful workforce that's working together, that's engaged, that brings out the soft skills that older workers innately have because they've been in the workforce for so long. And that the multi-generational teams are both, supportive of the older workers, but they're also supportive of the younger workers. It's really a win-win for everybody and for the employer.
And Heather, speaking of that, because I like that concept, and I don't know if it's a new concept, because there are many different ages, of course, that work together, but I love the multi-generational. How have employers taken to that suggestion or even that thought, and how it can kind of help each other and the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in general, they're very positive about the multi-generational workforce. I think they recognize that a mix of ages is good for different perspectives, for opportunities for mentoring and learning. We know from research that mixed age teams actually outperform teams that are less age diverse. And we sort of theorize that has to do with knowledge spillover. There's sort of a general sharing of knowledge when a team is working on something. The other thing is that employers really do respond to this point, which is that, when people work together on a common goal, it tends to break down stereotypes or biases that you might have about a person based on aspects of their identity. And age is no different, in terms of being able to break down those stereotypes. And it's really good for younger workers to, to be able to rely on older workers' experience, and for older workers to be able to rely on younger workers for, new perspectives and ideas. So it is a win-win. I think the thing that employers struggle with is sort of often is how to operationalize it. So, you can't, it's not just like, well, I'm going to start a new team and I'm going to deliberately pick people of different ages to work on it. So I think it's more the operational piece that they struggle with a little bit. But in general, and with this increased focus on the need for diversity, and it's imperative now in this the way we work now, age as an element of that is being welcomed. Which we're very pleased about, because when I started doing this work 7-8 years ago, it was sort of like crickets when you talked about age as an element of diversity.
And the other piece of that I'll just mention is to think about, as an employer, who's going to retire. And there's a whole hunk of knowledge that's in those older workers' heads. They're going to walk out the door with that unless the employer actively makes sure that they've transferred that knowledge from that worker who's been there a long time and has all of that institutional knowledge to the younger workers who are going to be there. Because otherwise, that's a lost opportunity and very inefficient for the employer not to make sure that knowledge is transferred. And also, one other point I'll make is, how do you make a product or a service that's appealing to a wide mass audience if the people who are working on that are all of a particular age cohort? Correct. Wouldn't you want that age diversity to ensure that the product or the service that you're building appeals to a wide range of people, the widest range possible, more customers for an employer? So it makes sense to build those multi-generational teams and things like that.
Oh, I love that. And it looks like we do have a question. And Susan, I'll probably start with you first, and then I'll go to Heather. So what options do older folks have if they perceive elements of ageism during their job interviews? Is it better to call out the employer for this behavior, or make a case that they are wrong in their perception of older workers? And that's from Jim.
So in an interview, I think it's very important to stay positive. So, saying, I can do this job. I have I have these qualities that make me successful, and I have been successful in the past. I think that's the way to do. To call them out or to sound angry is probably going to put you on the bad list as far as whether they, are going to hire you. So you kind of have to turn it around on them and demonstrate to them those soft skills that we've talked about, that you have, that you're a problem solver, that you're a team player, that you're collaborative, all of those really important traits that you've learned over the years, and how you're going to bring that to their workforce and how you're going to help them succeed.
Absolutely. And Heather, same question.
Yes, I would completely agree. I think as tempting as it might be to, say, hey, that sounds a little bit ageist or, a sexist or whatever, right? It's probably in an interview, it's probably not a good idea. I think all the tips that, you hear probably from us and other, job focused advice sites, to be really clear about your skills that match the skills listed in the job description, to emphasize those transferable skills, to emphasize other aspects. You might have vast networks. Networks are something that take time to build. Older workers tend to have bigger networks than younger workers. If you're in sales, for example, that might be an asset. So don't forget to mention all of those assets. And the other last thing I'll mention is, although it's not something that we would encourage too much, but if you can go on sites like Glassdoor and others and say, I wasn't able to get this job. I sort of felt like there was some ageist comments in the interview. You can, after the fact, go and sort of share that within, in a forum like Glassdoor.
Or you could even go on Glassdoor beforehand and sort of see kind of, are they sort of known for asking these kinds of questions?
Yeah, and if you're watching this right now or in replay, Glassdoor, I agree. If you go on there and pick the employer, sometimes it does even say, this is how the interview went, or this is how it was working there. I do agree. I think Glassdoor is kind of a hidden gem that not too many people know about. And I know we're kind of getting to the end of our show, but Heather, I'll leave it, or I'll put it back to you about any last comments about the survey, and maybe why our viewers maybe should read it, and maybe information that they could take away.
Sure. Yeah. So the survey really is a good sort of window into what employers think about, how they assess candidates based on those types of parameters, skills, experience, and degrees. I would also encourage you to look at the list of skills that employers, for whatever reason, if it's inherent ageism or experience or whatever, don't rate older workers more highly on. One of them is adaptability. So make sure that you work on that skill and present that as an aspect of your professional identity. I think the last tip that I want to give you is, as a job seeker, is not about. I think this research is really worth reading. I also think it's a great idea to Google, top skills 2023 or top skills 2025, right? You'll end up finding white papers from the World Economic Forum or Coursera or whatever that talk about the skills that are becoming in demand. And that can be a useful way to get a little more granular. You might say, oh, I need to get technical skills. Well, which technical skills,
Sure.
right? You're not going to be coding necessarily, but you might need digital literacy for a marketing job these days. So those, and you don't have to read the whole white paper, right? But just skip to those charts which show like these skills are on the rise, these skills are on the decline. Use the verbiage of the skills that are on the rise versus skills that are on the decline. Sometimes it's all about just the words you use to match so that you can get past those bots, those tracking systems.
Yes.
So that's my last piece of advice. But yeah, the research is definitely worth a look as well.
And Amber, can I put in a plug for our new skills builder for work again?
Yes,
So
please.
If you are a restaurant worker, you're a retail worker, you're a warehouse worker, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go work in an office or work remotely. You're going to have to know the Microsoft Office suite. We are offering that for free. It's a 9-hour course. You can also just take Excel, PowerPoint, or Word on their own without the full 9 hours. They're each 3 hours. aarp.org/work skills is where you will find that offering. And we also offer a PMP. We offer all sorts of courses. You can get certifications. You can get lots of things. But that Microsoft Office suite is a free course for anybody who wants to take it. So
the website that Susan just referenced is up, up to me. I'm a life learner. I want to learn something every day. But the one thing that we hear, the fear is also, technology. And so if this right here, if you're watching this right now, like I would love to learn more about Excel or Word. As Susan said, it's free. So right now is the best time, especially during the Wisconsin winters, to maybe learn a little bit more about Microsoft Suite. And ladies, I just want to thank you so much. The research that AARP does is just top notch. And I don't know if our members and our viewers even realize all the information that they can find on the AARP website. So we'll make sure, if you're watching this in replay, to put the websites in the notes of this event, so that you can click on it and download it yourself and pass it along to friends, families, employers. I think the more that we can get the information out, the more we can educate our fellow community. So I want to thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciate you being here. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us. Yes.
Thanks, ladies. And if you are watching this in replay, please feel free to share this video on your Facebook or YouTube page. For next week's show, actually, this will go hand in hand, or I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. For upcoming events, we always like to plug those. There's a few that are coming out. So Thursday, the 20th, which is tonight. So what 5 top scams have in common and how you can avoid them. Wednesday, the 26th, we have the AARP Career Summit. So this is perfect. New year, new opportunities. So if you're looking maybe for a change, that would be great. That's free. Thursday, the 27th, explore tech lectures, so mindfulness apps. And then Thursday, the 27th, we have movies for grownups, and that is Being the Ricardos. If you're interested in any of those, you could go to the website below or the phone number to register. They are free. Please also remember, small dollar, big impact. Of course, this is a monthly grant that AARP Wisconsin awards to local communities. If you have a really cool, innovative, out-of-the-box idea to impact your community, grants go up to $1,000. If you're interested in learning more, please go to aarp.org, WI, capitalized, and then SDBI, which stands for Small Dollar, Big Impact. For next week's show, this goes perfect. So today we learned more about survey results and all that goodness. So next week, we're going to have our friends from Southeast Goodwill of Southeast Wisconsin, talking about also thriving in the job market, but they're going to talk about like tips and tricks. We talked about, soft skills, transferable skills, interviewing tips and tricks. So this will be a really great addition to the goodness of today's show. So you can come back here next Thursday at noon. As always, we thank you so much for joining us. Please, once again, feel free to share this on your social media to your friends and your family. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. And until then, be safe.